Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and tonight I've got Mac with me. Welcome, Mac. Tonight we're going to be previewing the first knockout round from the 2024 Euros, and we'll also touch on the teams that have been eliminated from the competition at this point. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social media, both on X and Instagram. Our handle is at @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. All right, so we're going to start off with the round of 16. Of course, that starts on Saturday with 2 matches per day going through to Tuesday. I'll read out the fixtures that we have ahead of us, and then we can go back and forth, Mac, with which ones we're looking most forward to. Firstly, we have Spain against Georgia, Germany, Denmark, Portugal, Slovenia, France, Belgium, Romania, Netherlands, Austria, Turkey, England, Slovakia, and Switzerland, Italy. Now, Mac, of course, you have it on our screen here, how we're going to basically kind of build out our predictor from here on. But essentially, we'll go back and forth and also discuss where we were wrong from our predictions, who we have as, I guess, our ever-changing favorites for the tournament, and, what surprises could come for us along the way. But first off, Mac, I'll let you cook any specific game, or do you want to start off in order, or what would you like to do?
I think we start off in order. Let's go game by game, because I think that we can talk about each individual matchup, and then from there, kind of pick who we think, and then quickly run through the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. At least that's what I think. How do you feel about that?
That sounds good to me. So I guess then Spain-Georgia is our first matchup coming up, and after that display Georgia had against against Portugal, it feels sad that we have to lean towards Spain being the favorites, even though that's on paper and if you're giving us the odds, that's essentially what we'll see. But is there a chance, Mac, that Georgia can put an upset here against Spain, who are the only team to win all 3 group stage games this European campaign?
See, going into the tournament, I would have said hell no. As of right now, I still lean no, but not as aggressively, if that makes sense. Because there is a template. Georgia, if you recall going into the tournament, that was one of the biggest areas I feel like I got wrong. I put Georgia on the same level as Albania. They do have, of course, have a couple of better players. Australia, of course, do you have to name one, a world-class player. But they have a template of potential success, and that was demonstrated through their game against Portugal, where what they can do, as long as they're able to be solid defensively, have a strong performance from their goalkeeper, keep everything out, and then at the same time have a couple of chances go in their favor in terms of a mistake. In fact, in the Portugal game, there were 2 of them, a penalty and then a mistake from Antonio Silva, to be able to lead to a breakaway. So from there, if they're able to get that, then yes, there is that potential. So that they have the right game plan. The tough part is, if you're looking for a team that I would argue is, maybe other than France on the defensive end, least likely to make a mistake in possession to give an opportunity to the other team, versus Spain, I feel like their weakness would be if someone's able to cut against them and break them down, which no team's done. They're the only team to not have conceded thus far in the tournament. So there's still complete goose egg there. So for me, I don't think there's a real shot for Georgia here, but they have a potential template. But like I said, to go back around it again, Spain's set up to be one of the strongest teams in the world, to stop and play against that template and be comfortable just dictating at the game and waiting for their 1 or 2 big chances themselves to score their goal. What about you? Is there an individual matchup or a player, or what are your thoughts on this matchup between these 2 teams?
Yeah, of course, we are going to be looking at Georgia's Mikautsade. I'm sorry, I'm of course butchering his name, but he is the tournament's top goal scorer, and that's, of course, a Georgian player. He's going to have a big game, and, of course, Kvaradona, however you want to say his name. Of course, one of the standout players from this Georgian national team as well. Both of them will need to have big games against Spain, who will look to dominate possession all 90 minutes, but if Georgia can get those counterattacks right, the way that they showed a glimpse of against Portugal when they had their game, there is a chance, a very slim chance. Though Spain, they were able to rotate their whole squad in their last game against Albania, still were able to get the win. Very unlikely to, like you said, make a mistake leading to on opposition goal. The only thing about Spain is, if I'm remembering correctly, they haven't come back from being scored on first so far this tournament. So if Georgia can land a early punch, what will that game look like? Very much like Portugal, who rotated the squad. They struggled very much to break this Georgia side down, and eventually Georgia were able to get a second goal themselves. So that's the only thing I'm looking at the moment. But just to give Georgia their credit, and I know that we're not talking about Spain too much because I think we both agree we expect them to go through. Georgia, we had them finishing last in their group, and Czech Republic, we had third in that group. They actually were the ones that finished last. So unfortunately for us, we got that part wrong. But hey, here's to watch. Here's to us watching what will happen with this group game here. Anything else here, Mac, or do you want to jump on to the next match? Germany, Denmark? What do you think?
Yes. So I think that there is a clear favorite here with Germany once again over the Danes. I think if you're looking at Denmark, they made it to the round of 16 without winning a game. They didn't lose, but they didn't win. And I'm very skeptical in terms of, I know it was very much a plague of Group C. I think you're talking about the fewest goals, I think, in a group stage in Euros, with a total of 7. So that's England, Denmark, Slovenia all scoring 2, and Serbia only scoring 1, and they're the only team not to make it out of that Group C. So it was really the group of pain in terms of, okay, this is going to be boring, lethargic game. Very much was all the way through for all of the games played between these teams. And Denmark was put in a position to be a little bit advantageous towards it because they were be able to pick up 3 straight draws. So for them, I'm just worried about how are they going to be creative enough? How are they going to be able to get on the front foot to be able to get at a German defense, which I think, if I recall correctly, is going to be missing Jonathan Tah due to accumulation of yellow cards. So we're going to see a little bit of a change up at the back. So in that matchup, maybe they see some potential. But again, I'm very skeptical in terms of their ability to do that. Whereas Germany, I think they've gotten their slap in the face in some ways. They were comfortably finishing first in Group A on 7 points, drawing their last game against Switzerland. And I think that game might have been a little bit of a reality check for them, where even though they may dominate a game of possession, they may be able to create a few decent opportunities. They need to be at their level best to convincingly beat or even to get by to the next round. So I think that they're not going to come out this lightly. In fact, I would have been more scared for Germany if they actually had won all 3 of their games, where there might have been a sense of complacency going to the game where they may feel like they can walk over Denmark. Whereas right now, considering the last result, considering I would argue there's similar play style between Switzerland and Denmark of how they might try to disrupt Germany, I think they should feel comfortable that they finally were able to break through, get that draw, and now go on to this game with a lot more confidence. That's my initial thought. So again, I know we're going to lean favorites here. For me, it's Germany all the way.
I have to agree with you there. Germany, even though they left it to the last minute, needing a Fulkrug equalizer in added time for the game against Switzerland, Germany do have what it takes. And I think, like you said, they got that sort of wake-up call in this game against Switzerland. They're, of course, going to be on, or they should be, working on all scenarios and, of course, being ready for this Danish challenge. Denmark, though, even though they finished second in the group, like you said, they haven't been very, very convincing. Not winning a single game, but, of course, not losing a single game so far this tournament. So that really doesn't tell us too much, I would say. They I guess, can play up to the standard of their opposition, which maybe will give us a great game against Germany, but doesn't really make a case for itself that they can step up and the players, apart from, of course, your Christian Eriksen's and maybe even your Hodglands, maybe they'll definitely need to be stepping up for Denmark to have a chance, and so far this tournament, it hasn't shown that way. So, of course, I do have to agree with you there, Mac. Germany would be my favorites here. I guess to quickly touch on the group with England, though, we did get England and Denmark finishing top 2, so we did get that right, and we're of course going to talk about England coming up soon. So, I think we are good there. Let's move on, Mac, to the third game, Portugal versus Slovenia. Now, I do want to mention that just going off of that point, we did have Serbia above Slovenia in the in Group C, I believe. That actually is the other way around. Slovenia made it through in the third place team out of that group, and Serbia were knocked out. So of course they are now going to be facing Portugal, a very very strong team this competition. And even though they did lose against Georgia the last time out, like I said, rotated their squad a lot, and when they have their players clicking, probably one of the most fluid offensive teams this tournament. So for me, I'm gonna just mention that Portugal is definitely my favorite in this tie. Do you see anything different coming out of this tie, Mac?
No, absolutely not. I want Slovenia to do well. Luka Doncic, as we know, one of my favorite basketball player in the world at the moment, is Slovenian. So I definitely like to see them to do well. But this is where their journey ends. It just is what it is. I think people maybe are thinking, considering the result against Georgia, Portugal might come this a little bit lackluster. They made wholesale changes. Their whole back line, Inacio, Pereira, and Silva, none of those three are going to touch the pitch against Slovenia. So the mistakes coming at the back, and you would assume if it's Pepe, Ruben Diaz back in the center of defense, you might feel a little bit more, you should feel more confident there. I do though think that, just to highlight, their weakness was if someone's able to get at them and drive down the middle and be able to take their players one-on-one in the midfield, in the defensive third as well. I think that's the area of the pitch where they're the weakest compared to their breadth of talent all the way at the top, and I would even put in wide back positions as well. So for me, I think their weakness has been shown, but it was against their, let's say their B defense. So I'm not worried about them. Portugal all the way through, no questions.
Yeah, we're gonna need a big game from Jan Oblak if Slovenia have any chance, and unfortunately, I just think Portugal have too much firepower going forward. All right, then let's talk about the last matchup on this side of the bracket: France versus Belgium. I think a lot of people will be looking at this one as a more interesting one because, of course, Belgium, we know, have historically, over the last 10, 12 years, this has been definitely their golden generation. But so far this Euros, they haven't impressed me at all. And I think they actually just made it through. Well, didn't just make it through, but they could have been knocked out of that Group E, which was a standout one. All four teams finished on 4 points, and it was literally, I think, something like yellow cards or something that really, goal difference actually that really separated these teams. Belgium, though, finished second and are going to be facing France, who were missing Mbappe for a couple games, actually one game, I believe, but he came back. And they still didn't win their last game out. So, Mac, from here, what do you see happening in this matchup?
Yeah, I would have been very excited here to be able to pick Belgium. And I think the difference for me is where I think Belgium are going to get their 1 to 2 chances. They have Kevin De Bruyne, they have Jeremy Doku. Jeremy Doku is one of the more funny but frustrating players in the tournament, in my opinion, where you love everything he does for a couple of seconds, but then he completely flails. It's like a fish out of water in some cases when he's trying to be able to take a man one-on-one, but has some talent there and is able to create opportunities for himself and his teammates. Kevin De Bruyne, similarly. I would have been primed and ready to go if we had a different Lukaku. I understand Gio's not here, and if he's somewhere right now, he's laughing and crying at the exact same time. But let's say if this is a 2019, 2020, or 2020 or 21 Lukaku playing for Inter Milan at that time, winning the Serie A in one of those years, having 23, then 24 goals respectively, kind of in the form of his life at that moment, then I think there's a chance. But I think Lukaku has not been on all tournament where there's been close offside calls, scuffed chances, where in the game against Ukraine, he should have won it, in my opinion, when he was put through by Kevin De Bruyne and he scuffed a shot. So for me, if he was firing on all cylinders, I think they have a template, like I said, to be able to take on and beat France. Considering he's not like that, and he's very much, let's put it this way, Manchester United or Chelsea version of Lukaku, that's not good enough to beat this France team. And I would think they needs to at least score 2 goals to be able to get through. And generally, you will likely need one of them to come from your striker, and I don't see that coming. So for me, it's France.
Yeah, though the one thing about France is, of course, they failed to beat Poland in the last time out, last game in the group, actually. They were leading this game, but of course, Poland, through a Lewandowski penalty, were able to tie it. And actually, watching the ending stages of that game, Poland looked actually the most likely to get a winner in this game. So that's actually a little bit of concern for France, who actually finished second in that group. Of course, we'll go on to talk about the team that finished first later on, but that is a little bit of a concern for me, Mac. Not necessarily in terms of any specific player per se, but maybe that as a system they haven't produced enough to maybe have a clear cut margin of separating themselves between themselves as a favorite compared to the rest of the tournament. And so this might be closer than some of us think, but any moment I think France can click, and I think I would edge them to beat Belgium, considering how disappointing Belgium were. And I do have to emphasize how disappointing they were, because against Ukraine, where they essentially just needed to tie, they were doing the best they could to waste time towards the end of the game, where you're looking at Ukraine, you feel sorry for them because they if they got a result, they would have gone through. But Belgium really spoiled the party, and for their fans as well, spoiled the party because they're not playing well either. So France, I think we edge them out here. Let's move on then to, Mac, the other side of the bracket. Now, some people might say, Mac, this is the quote-unquote easier side of the bracket. I'm not sure how you feel about this.
Everyone should and will say that. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, then let's go straight into the first matchup, Romania versus the Netherlands. Mac, what do you think is happening here?
Okay, again, I understand Romania, they topped the group. But no, this is not happening. It was a great tournament for them thus far. But Netherlands, just based on pure quality, Romania maybe can keep their Cinderella run running. But this is one of the worst cases for them, considering where they finished in their group, to then have to go out and play a team like Netherlands. So it's a rough look across the board. That group in itself, it was a smorgasbord of mistakes in some ways, where Austria, team we'll talk about it a minute, finished first. Netherlands finished third, I think it was, and then France finished second. So
that's right.
The fact that you finished first in your group and then you still have to line up to play Netherlands is kind of like, it's just an unfortunate twist of events for Romania. But I think this is where it's done, because Netherlands, again, across every position, I think they're better than Romania on almost any given day. Obviously, I hope Romania to get through, because it makes it easier for someone else's favorite team later down the road potentially. But again, in all likelihood, it should be Netherlands here.
Yeah, exactly. And how unfortunate Romania are, you would say how lucky Netherlands are to really land this fixture in the round of 16, where you didn't play well. You won your first game. I believe it was against Poland. Then you tie France. Okay, that's not horrible. But against Austria, who, gotta give credit to Austria, we'll talk about them, you didn't really impress, and you failed to win a game that a lot of people would have expected to at least a tie in this game that would have actually put you in contention to finish first in the group. Now you're finishing third, and you're still getting a favorable tie. So I do lean towards the Netherlands here, but hey, anything could happen here. And I'll be definitely interested to watch this, especially after the Virgil van Dijk mistake that really led Austria to get all 3 points in this game. So let's move on to Austria-Turkey, Mac. This one, I guess, similar to that Belgium-France game. I think for maybe more hipsters and more neutrals, this one is very much so a very interesting matchup. Austria, of course, topping the group with France and the Netherlands, looking like a dark horse for a lot of people now. Very impressive against a Turkish side who did win 2 games, but did lose to Portugal. So themselves haven't had a bad tournament so far. I'm actually very disappointed that these two teams are going to be facing each other, because if these two teams were facing other teams and maybe met each other in the quarterfinals, that would have been a lot more fun. But that being said, I think based on the run of form that these two teams are going through, I would lean towards Austria edging this one. Just a goal that Sabitzer scored just to ice the game against the Netherlands, where he was played through, and actually a couple of those goals that Austria scored coming in from the left-hand side and making timely runs and finding space in behind the defense. Sabitzer is looking for that pass, can't find one, thinks, all right, I'll just blasts this towards net, finds the top corner, and really ices the game there with the, of course, Cole Palmer celebration. Austria, I think, will just edge it based off of what we've seen from the group stages. But Mac, what do you think will happen in this game?
Do you agree? First of all, you forgot the major piece we're talking about with this Austrian team is they have the next Sir Alex Ferguson managing them, the GOAT himself, Ralph Ragnick. Okay, again, he saw the vision, he saw this coming. To top a group with Netherlands and France, he knew it was good. And on top, if you're thinking about that, he's missing probably the best Austrian footballer of all time, David Alaba, on his team, a 10-time Player of the Year for Austria. So for them to have this achievement and potentially, and I would argue, be the favorite against a round of 16 opponent, this is a dream of a dream situation for any Austrian football fan out there. So for me, I completely agree. They're one of the teams that epitomize that word, team, where it feels like everyone understands their role, understands the position on the team. They play as a cohesive unit, understanding the same vision of what they want to accomplish on the pitch. So I think that, and I would argue, they should have even beaten France in the first game. They played like the better team for quite a bit, which again heaves on the concern for France themselves in their game. But Austria for me has been one of the biggest surprises in some ways. But one of the teams where I think any neutral goes out and wants to support them because you feel like they're going about it in the right way with a good team of players. So for me, again, I agree. Austria make it to the next round.
That being said, I'm excited to see what Turkey do have to show for themselves in this game, and I think it will actually be a very entertaining game. Moving on from a very entertaining game to maybe a team that's failed to impress us, Mac, so far. I'm going to let you cook. England will face Slovakia in the round of 16. What do we expect here?
So England will win. That's what we expect. I think the case just goes there. And in England it's kind of like, do you know when the rich keep getting richer in some ways and luck is just ever on their favor? Because England have been blessed by finishing first in the group and France finishing second in theirs, where, again, a lot of people going into this tournament, us included, had a semifinal matchup teed up between England and France. France ducked that fight and be like, nah, we're good. We can't handle them. Well, they're too busy tying every game. Let's go over to the other side of the bracket instead. And you're like, it's okay. We can stay here, you know? So for them, if we're looking how the bracket shaped out, and after the group stage games, the biggest winner across the entire competition has been England. Because again, not to count your chickens before they hatch, things seem to be teed up for them once again for Euro. So for me, England should beat this Slovakia team. However, Foden has left for the birth, I think, of his third child, so he should be back in time for the game. That shouldn't be a concern. I think even Kyle Walker also went back for other personal reasons. There's been a whole lot of shakeup where even Jude Bellingham came out and talked about how he felt a lot of the fans kind of getting on them in the stadium and through social media. To be fair, it's kind of for your fault because you've been playing like ass, so they should get on you. But the point being is this team right now, just like I said for Austria, feel like they are on the same page or to create opportunities or work together as a solid unit. Offensively, England have none of that. Defensively, they've been very solid. Mark Gahey, I think, aside from one mistake in the most recent game, him and John Stones seem like a dream partnership. Kyle Walker's doing what he does in the back, and Trippier has just not been making mistakes. So across the back four, defensively with Declan Rice in front of them, they've been fine. It's just the offensive third about when they do get there, what type of patterns of movement are they looking to do? When they get out wide one-on-one, have they been able to get balls into the box and create opportunities for Harry Kane? And for me, offensively, it's been a complete failure. They were lucky to score in the game against Denmark off a deflection. Jude Bellingham's even goal in the first game, again, came off deflection. So they've been very fortunate to get on the score sheet in a couple of games, but just based on quality, and you're facing Slovakia, they should see themselves through, in my opinion.
So I agree with you completely there. Though I understand why a lot of fans are upset about how England have been performing so far this tournament, but I do have to give England some credit here where I do think still, in terms of the defensive shape, they only conceded a goal against Denmark, which was a good goal. Apart from that, I can't think of any other chance that stands out against them, though, of course, the competition that they have faced so far hasn't been the most impressive. That still is worth something in a tournament matchup, sort of, essentially in a tournament, you really need a defensive solidity to help you through it. And so I know that England have failed to impress so far going forward, but this at least you've built yourself a solid foundation, and then hopefully you switch things up a little bit moving forward. You have the quality of those individual players that I think Southgate has been relying on and hoping Kane, Bellingham, Foden, Saka can, produce like one or two moments themselves each throughout these games to really push them over the edge. I'm confident that we'll see something click eventually, but it has to be soon rather than later because, of course, after this, they will face the winner of the next game, Switzerland, Italy, which could be a very fascinating matchup. So moving straight into that, Switzerland versus Italy now. It was Switzerland who finished second and also Italy who finished second in both groups A and B, respectively. Italy, last gasp tying goal, actually a fantastic goal, was what separated themselves and Croatia from finishing a second and third, respectively. And even though Italy were down for a bulk of that game, they did wake up after they went down. So I do like how Italy showed out eventually, and they haven't performed, I would say, particularly bad in this tournament, except for, of course, when Spain did win that matchup. Switzerland, though, another team that's been very impressive. They did win the game against, I think they won the game against Hungary.
Yeah.
And then tied Scotland and Germany. So they have a low-key sleeper squad that can, produce moments of magic. You have your Xhaka, your Friller, your Mbolos, and Doy scored that great goal against Germany. You have Jan Sommer, a good goalkeeper. And then, of course, the back three of Fabian Schär, Akanji, and Rodriguez. Pretty decent squad here, Max. So I can't really call it too much. I want to say Italy based off of their individual quality, but I'm going to let you cook as well. What do you think will happen?
So, for me, I want Italy to win. The reason being is because that means they face England in the quarterfinals, and England get the revenge for the last Euros. However, I think Italy, if we look at who's in terms of performance over the 3 games of the tournament, I think Italy really had 2 misses against Spain, and they were very, very fortunate against Croatia. And they've only really beat a poor Albania squad. Whereas Switzerland, yes, I think that they had a poor game against Scotland where they maybe could have won that game, played a little bit better. But beating Hungary, and I would argue should have beat Germany as well. So I think thus far they've had better performances. As well as one player you haven't mentioned for Switzerland themselves is your favorite, Xherdan Shaqiri. And he's going to show out with a golazo of a golazo. He's already got one this tournament. Can he get a second? Maybe as a sub. Who knows? But I think for me, what the difference would be is where Italy, where they've had their success in creating opportunities, and it's really in transition. Chiesa, I think, came off the bench in the most recent game due to injury. I'm doubtful if he does start this game. That from a creative sense, getting behind on that left-hand side, so that'd be Switzerland's right, Fabian Schär and Widmer out of Rosa's right wing back. I think that's going to be a very tough task. And Akanji himself in the center of defense, for me, I know it's a little bit shortchanged, but he's been one of the defenders for the tournament, playing in the middle of a back three, controlling pace, being that last line of defense, being able to make sure that he applies recover over to Rodriguez on the left-hand side as well. So I've really loved his game. So for me, again, I'll let you decide, but I actually think based off thus far this tournament, the only underdog from the group round of 16 I see winning the game and who I would potentially put money on, it would be Switzerland over Italy, who I think they are the underdog going into this game.
I love that shout. So if you put Switzerland in that, I guess I'll just quickly read out, if you don't mind scrolling up to the top there, are projected.
Let's quickly run through this. Let's do the rest of the tournament. Why not?
All right. Spain, Germany. That's a tough one. We actually had Germany-Spain in the first quarterfinals from our predictions. Okay. We had Germany to win that game out. So, Mac, what do you think here?
I think we predicted it. Let's keep it the same. Again, Spain's look good so far, but I think against Germany, they'll get sussed out. That's
okay. Fine. I'm good with that. Germany, home advantage, gotta root for them. I would not be surprised, though, just want to put it out there, that if Spain continue their unbeaten run and then win out.
This quarter's bracket right here is pain of pain. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Spain, Germany. This is pain, and with the S, without the S, it's all of it. and everything, and even this other matchup as well. So again, I agree. Any four of these teams could beat any of the other team that they potentially teed up to face, but we gotta pick somebody. So for me, again, for Germany, what about for the second game for you between Portugal and France, who I think many predicted to be the finals?
Yeah, we had predicted Netherlands against Portugal at this stage, but of course, it's Portugal versus France. Now, this is really tough because at this moment, I would have to go with Portugal. We had Portugal beating the Netherlands at this stage, but we didn't know it was going to be France. France haven't been as impressive, though, of course, if you're looking at quality of the teams, I would slightly put France above. But if you're giving me, they play their match tomorrow, I think Portugal is going to win that. What do you think, Mac?
I think that's fair to say. The reason being is because if you look off the recent performances, and given the amount of changes that Portugal did make in their loss, I think they've been the better team thus far. However, again, I think if we get a good game from France, which we can in the round of 16, I think you ask me in a couple of days, it completely flips. Because if France come out and show up versus Belgium, I think, again, based off of, do you know how the saying is, form is temporary, class is permanent? The class team is France. So if they come out and give a strong performance in that matchup, and now they are in have the wind behind them setting their sails, I think France would end up beating Portugal and have the better team. But today, based off what we've seen so far this tournament from each team's starting 11s, I would agree and go Portugal.
Okay, wow, that is crazy. But moving on to the other side of the bracket, the Netherlands versus Austria. We actually had here Belgium versus France, one of the ties from the round of 16 that are actually happening. We had France winning out here, but from the Netherlands against Austria, oof, I want to say if Austria wins out, if we're going with what we predict, if Austria wins out, their momentum is going to be too hard to stop. I would edge them over the Netherlands, having seen what they have done already to the Netherlands in the group stage game. So I would have Austria. What do you think, Mac?
You want to cheer on Voth the Goat Ragnar? I'm here for it. Let's do this. I'm 100% down. Let's go.
Exactly.
Now,
okay, so
England versus Switzerland. Yeah. This is. I think England wins this game. I'll be frank. This should be pretty easy. No,
that's fair. We had England versus Croatia, and England making it out of that round. So let's have England there, and let's predict it here back. Germany, Portugal. What do you think here?
This is tough. This is really tough. Because again, if we're assuming these teams are having the form and winning out from their respective games, they both face stiff competition. They've both been really, really good, and I think we had this semifinal initially. Anyway,
that's right.
We both went Germany, if I recall correctly, because of the home advantage. So I'm going to stick with my pre-turn. Did you convince me?
Sorry, we had Portugal. I think we actually had Portugal. Yeah.
Okay, I would stick with my pre-tournament prediction. Then I'm going to stick by it. For a second there, I thought I picked Germany. I think I was trying to say we should pick Germany, and you convinced me Portugal. But I'll stick with our consensus and go Portugal. I think this is a 50-50 once again.
It really is.
Let's go with Portugal because you know what this tees up.
I have to agree with you there because the next one, Austria, England. Sorry, Mac, this is a really tough one. I want to say England, but anything could happen at this stage.
No, you're crazy. England win this game. England should win this game. England should win this game.
Fair.
Will they win the final? Probably not, but England should win this game. You got to build up the crescendo of hope to have it come collapsing down, no?
Fair. Okay, so we have England, Portugal in the finals, and from here, it's tough. It's very, very tough.
I'll tell you one thing. I'm putting money on Portugal because I'm doing what we call the raid.
Absolutely.
If Portugal win, I win. If Portugal lose, I still win.
Absolutely.
So, but I think Portugal, if at this point, I think they kind of would feel, it might become feeling like it's their tournament in a lot of ways. Because they've kind of had to kind of get through a test of fire with the teams they faced. Whereas England, again, because of how they played thus far this tournament, where they've had a lot of questions, whereas Portugal on their best have looked absolutely cutthroat, I would lean Portugal, in my opinion, between these two teams as of today.
So I have to agree with you there. The only thing that separates our opinions, of course, is how these next couple games play out. If England click against who did we have them against? Slovakia. If they click against Slovakia and then put Switzerland aside easily, against Austria, they might win by a couple goals. Then that changes things.
Yeah.
But that really is if they click in the next couple of games, which are, of course, the business end of this tournament.
So many things can still change. So many things can change. We're just snapshotting as of today. Who knows? Maybe Portugal get knocked out by Slovenia. Luka Doncic posts up last week, and England start to score a lot of goals. Probably won't happen. But again, things can still change just like they've done since the beginning of the tournament. So that's why we love tournament football, eh?
Exactly. So we've talked about the good stuff, the predicting, of course, what's going to happen in the rest of the tournament. We're going to take a quick break and we'll come back quickly just to touch on the teams that have gone out at this stage of the tournament and what the future holds for them. So stay with us, guys. Welcome back to Also Footy, guys. We are going to finish off our podcast now discussing the nations who have been eliminated. And of course, these are Hungary, Scotland, Croatia, Albania, Serbia, Poland, Ukraine, and Czech Republic. They will no longer be part of the 2024 European competition. So moving on, of course, we have to just quickly mention a couple of standout nations. Firstly, from Group A, we predicted, Mac, you and I, Hungary and Scotland were going to make it through, and Switzerland would have been out. We were very wrong on that. Hungary and Scotland were actually the two nations that went out in this competition. So I guess just to go off of there, do we have anything to say from Hungary and Scotland respectively? I think for me, at the very least, I'm happy because both Szoboszlai and Andrew Robertson can go home, maybe chill in some ice water for the next couple weeks before preseason starts. So as a Liverpool fan, I'm quite pleased for them, but of course, very disappointed in how we predict Scotland to have a very good tournament. A lot of people were sort of saying Georgia is a team that's finally made it. They're just happy to be here. Hopefully they can get a win here or there, but I think this would have been, unfortunately, what of course Georgia eventually have completed was what Scotland would have expected. So anything to say on those results, Matt?
Well, for Hungary, quickly, this is kind of the curse of the Euro qualifications, where if you're just in a decent group and you can kind of make your way through, where they were undefeated through qualification, and it kind of led a lot of people to leave, and even us, where, okay, they should probably carry that type of form over when they're facing other competition, which, again, against Switzerland or Scotland, is not too different from the competition they may have faced in the qualification round. So kind of our fault on there. For Scotland, though, I do want to say it's actually that game against Hungary that cost them, because they would have been a team where they had a multitude of chances against Hungary before Hungary ended up going on and win that game. Cops of the tough substitution, where I think we're both Andy Robertson and Scott McTominay were taken off before the end of the game. I think if you go back and ask the Scotland manager, should they have stayed on the pitch? Absolutely, because you never know where you have those higher quality level of players in there for the final moments to score that goal. Instead of Hungary going on scoring the goal in the last minute, they would be on 4 points and making a way through to the knockout round. So for me, that was their biggest missed opportunity, that individual game. Instead of winning a game, which they should have based off on expected goals, they weren't clinical enough. They made their own mistakes at the back, end up losing it, and that's why they're out of the tournament. So, fortunate to see.
Yeah, let's move on then, Matt, to another big team, probably the team that stands out here, Croatia. We actually predicted them to go through into the next round of games. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, that last-minute equalizer from Italy meant that Croatia only secured 2 ties in their group stages, knocking them out of the tournament. I'm going to read out, of course, some of the big-name players from the Croatian national team who are likely going to play their last tournament. And the first one is, of course, Luka Modric, 38 years old. You also have Ivan Perisic at 35 years old. Andrej Kramaric at 33 years old. You have also Ante Budimir, their striker, at 32 years old. And Brozovic, not too far there, 31 years old. Mateo Kovacic, who you would have expected him to come into the prime and sort of the handing of the baton from Luka Modric to Kovacic. He's also 30, so by the time the next tournament rolls around, 32 maybe, if they make it to the next tournament. Of course, the Euros next time around, 4 years out, probably 34 years old going there. So very, very disappointing end to sort of that golden generation, if you will, for Croatia. What were your thoughts on how they went out, Mac?
Not holistically, I'm not actually surprised, because if you recall during our preview, I talked about where I would be concerned about them given the group that they face, where they were going to take so many points off of each other, where they may not get enough to actually make it out. The surprise really is that I thought they would finish on 3 points, beating Albania, and that was their big miss, of course. I know it's easy to say, but you're talking about a team that I think, aside from that game, posed really no threat across the to either Italy or Spain. It was really only the game against Croatia where we noticed anything coming up from them. So very disappointed of how that turned out in that manner. But am I necessarily surprised? No, because again, like I said, I thought Italy, in fact, probably would end up beating Croatia, just given on the styles and matchups. So for me, it's just the unlucky draw of the groups where it felt like, in a lot of ways, between the Italy and Croatia, where it's just unfortunate that it's like a rock paper scissors match where Croatia always play rock and Italy are always going to play paper, and it just is what it is. It feels like between how those two styles matched up. But the individual game against Albania was a tough spot for them. In regards to a transition of eras, of generations, this seems like clear cut and done. Where we do see other teams like Belgium, where they have the fortune of a couple of tiers of players. Where Eden Hazard moved on, but you still have a Kevin De Bruyne to be able to play, right? Where there isn't that next tee up. It feels like even the player that was anticipated to be that, Kovacic, he's not even a regular for Manchester City, his club team. And I would argue, even then, not that great of a player. So it seems like they're going to go back down into, I would argue, the realms of where they were previous to this generation, and there isn't those reinforcements coming. So again, want to respect what they've done, making a World Cup final, going deep in tournaments, being a consistent threat where they're not an easy team to play. So you want to give their laudits, you want to give them their flowers, but unfortunately for them, it wasn't the swan song that they wanted, for sure.
Definitely. And going now straight into, I guess, for me, the last team that I wanted to definitely mention before we finish our podcast, Ukraine. They were a force part of that group. I think it was Group E, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Where all 4 teams finished on the same points. I think what did for them, of course, is the first matchup against Romania, who I think predicted they would have finished last in this group. They actually finished first. That 3-0 loss was just too hard of a hill to climb. Of course, having beat Slovakia in the second game, giving them a little bit of hope, but facing Belgium in your last game, needing a result, and how other results played out was just what did for Ukraine ultimately. And like I mentioned, I was very much looking forward to their tournament, and in that fantasy draft that I'm in, I picked 3 of their players. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to drop all of them because they are now out of their tournament. But yeah, just your players that we are quite accustomed to in Zinchenko and Mudryk. I thought they were going to have great tournaments, and of course, the top scorer for, I think, one of the top scorers, if not the top scorer for the Liga, Zobic, I believe, the Ukrainian player. I thought he would have been having a great tournament. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. And so, Mac, any words on how Ukraine ultimately were knocked out?
I think I think that the only team in Euro group stage to finish with 4 points but didn't actually qualify to be able to make it to the next round. So it's just the nature of things where there's actually a team on 3 points that qualified through, with that being Slovenia. But again, it's just the nature of things. And I think you're spot on in terms of the first game. Even when you talked about their individual players who we anticipated going to the tournament to be kind of their quote unquote star guys, didn't even start the last game. Mudryk didn't play in the last game. Zinchenko didn't start the last game. Mikulenko started ahead of him and played better than him at left back, even though traditionally Zinchenko while playing for the international has played in the center of midfield. He wasn't really trusted to be on the pitch playing against a Kevin De Bruyne, right? So for me, I'm not necessarily surprised because I feel like in all their good players, there is a weak spot that can be taken advantage of. Whereas otherwise than that, they're not too different than, I would say, a lot of teams around them. So for me, the reason why we picked them necessarily together, for me at least, is that player for player for Romania, yeah, they're about the same, maybe slightly better, but there isn't too much margin of difference between them. And that's unfortunate that it carried over for this tournament. But credit to them to be able to make it this far. I think that even through the qualifications, it always seemed like they were on a razor edge of just making to the tournament. So still to come in, collect 4 points, I think that's an accomplishment. And look back with the disappointment of, you know what, hey, it's just given how the group broke down that they weren't able to make it through.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, now that we know the teams are out and we're looking forward to the round of 16, this concludes our podcast for today. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at House of underscore Footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well, houseoffooty at hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be after the round of 16, so sometime next week when we review the first knockout matches and we preview the quarterfinals for the 2024 Euros. So until then, Mac, thank you for joining us.
Can't wait to see what we got wrong.
And see you guys soon.